Hi there. I recently posted a video showing how I covered this tailplane in a Doculam laminating film and then covering over the top of that with tissue. So you end up with a structure that's not only strong and durable, but you end up with a lovely vintage kind of traditional look to it. And when I posted this video, it created quite a lot of interest. A lot of people were quite keen to try it. But there was a couple of questions about, well, if you're putting the tissue over the laminating film and it gets damaged, how easy is it to repair? So I thought I would do this video just showing how to effect a repair on a Doculam tissue structure like this. Now, when I was doing this model, I wanted to see what the different colours would look like and what the orange would look like on top of the blue. So I've got this old scrap wing and I just covered it in Doculam and the tissue on top. You can see there's various bits of tissue and you can see the blue's lovely there on its own, but you put it on the orange and it goes a bit dark and a bit muddy. But anyway, that aside, this is exactly the same covering, which is really strong, as we've got here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a single panel and I'll show you how I would repair that. Right, well here we have some damage that we're going to repair. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out, rather than trying to patch that, I'm going to cut out that whole panel. Obviously need to be careful not to go through to the surface on the other side of the wing. So if I cut out the whole panel. Okay, so we've cut out the panel that we need to repair. Now this isn't going to be a seamless repair, but hopefully it won't look too bad. And we'll do it in the two colours the same as we've got here. But the first thing to do is to get the Doculam on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to confine the Doculam to these two cap strips. Now if I measure that is going to be 63 mil wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut myself a piece of the laminating film, 63 mil wide, and then we'll have a look at how we're going to put it on. Right, now I've cut my piece of Doculam which just covers those cap strips and the cutout area. Now this is 38 micron Doculam, and the shiny side is the top, the matte side is the side with the glue on. Now I'm just waiting for my iron to come up to temperature. I'm going to do this on 110 degrees, which is just enough to stick it in place. And first off, I'm just going to do down this side. Now this Doculam shrinks, but it doesn't shrink a massive amount, so we want to try and get it on as tight as possible. And in sticking this on down this side now, I'm being careful to not heat any of the Doculam in the open structure. I'm just trying to, hence I'm doing it from this side. Right, now we've got that one side stuck, what we need to do is pull this tight, which, as you can imagine, isn't the easiest of jobs. So what I'm going to do is use some magic tape. This is Scotch magic tape, and just see the label there. This is great stuff, I use lots of it. And I'm just going to put that just onto the edge of the Doculam and use that to pull it tight. There we go. So we just stick that down there. May need to adjust it in a minute. There we go. And by doing, if we try and do it without pulling it tight like this, I don't think we'll get a very good wrinkle-free finish. Okay, now you can see that has gone pretty good, except for this bottom and top edge, which we can actually just pull from the bottom there, but obviously not pulling it too much because we don't want to introduce wrinkles. Right, well now we've got this taped on and pulled quite taut, there's still a few little wrinkles that we just need to be careful of. So we just give that a little bit of a tug and stick it down. Now my iron is still quite cool, it's 113 degrees C at the moment, and as before I'm trying not to get the Doculam in the middle of this hot. I'm just wanting to do the edges. So we're going to stick it down and then we'll come back and visit it again and re-stick these edges just to make sure they're really well stuck, and we'll do that with a hotter iron. Right, I've now got this stuck around the edge, and what I'm going to do is take the tape off, but I'm not going to pull it that way. I'm going to try and pull it sideways just so it doesn't pull the Doculam loose. There we go. And I'm going to start to bump my iron up now, and I'm going to bump it up to about 130 degrees C, and I will go, once I've got these bits where the tape are, I will go around and stick the rest of it down around the edge, still being careful not to touch the middle bit yet. Right, well, I've now got the replacement Doculam on the wing, and you can see that's pretty taut, it's pretty good, but there are wrinkles just down here, and I think there's the odd one just at the top maybe. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shrink this down just as we would when we're doing the initial covering. I've got this on 130 degrees, and I will probably end up bumping it up to a much higher temperature, but we'll see. Actually, this is going pretty well as it is, and as I said in the very original video when I showed the covering technique, Doculam shrinks with heat, but it also shrinks as it cools down. It tends to contract. So if you're trying to get a wrinkle out and it won't come out, it might be that when you take your iron off the covering, the Doculam, it'll lose the wrinkle you're trying to get out as it cools down and contracts. So that's almost done now, and that's shrunk pretty well. There we go. So now we have our shrunken Doculam, which is looking good. And all we need to do now is to cover this with tissue. Actually, I'll just do this back end, and then I will, because there's a few wrinkles here which I'll just get out with a little bit of pressure. This Doculam is so thin that if you've got wrinkles, and actually there's a little bit of a bubble there, if you've got wrinkles and you just iron them, they just literally disappear because the Doculam's so thin. Right, there we go. So I will now get the tissue cut up, and we'll get this covered in tissue. Well, I've cut 2 pieces of tissue now, and this is lovely Japanese Asuka tissue, which I got from Free Flight Supplies in the UK, and there'll be a link in the description below this video just showing where you can get this. Now, if I was doing this on a proper wing that I really cared about, I would probably do it in 2 goes. So I would probably do the yellow first, wait for that to be dried and polyurethaned, and then I would do that. But as this is just an example, I'm going to do both together. And I'm not going to worry about trying to tie this in here. We'll just pretend that bit of blue isn't there. So let's get this on. Now, I've just cut this tissue very slightly wider than the Doculam that we put on, so which was 63mm wide. This is 64mm wide. So what I'm going to do now is just wet this, and this is exactly the same technique that I used on the tail plane in the very first video. So we're just going to get this on, get the wrinkles out, lift it up if need be. Right, now let's get this piece on as well. Let me just trim this. So we'll just place that over the top. And now this is going to be the difficult bit, because we've got the dip below the ribs, but as it's just a single piece, it will probably go on easier than this original stuff. Now this is nice and wet, so what I'm going to do is leave this now for 5 or 10 minutes, just so it gets really soaked, and then it will stretch a little bit better. Doesn't stretch particularly well, this, but it stretches enough. Right, well this has had a good soak now, and I'm just going to brush off the water and make sure there's no wrinkles in it. And try not to disturb this joint. Now I find a wide brush and just keep working this this front edge here. Hold that up so you can see, just to get the wrinkles out. And if it looks like the wrinkles aren't going to come out on that front edge, if you just keep wetting it and just keep working it, and there's no kind of rush here, if it starts to dry out you can just wet it again. Now that looks pretty wrinkle free, so I think we are almost ready to start. Almost ready to start polyurethaning this. Now just get some tissue and just get off the excess water around the side. Now the polyurethane I'm going to use, it's just a water-based matte clear polyurethane. It's lovely to use. It doesn't smell, well it does smell, but it's not a strong smell like dope or anything like that. You don't need to do it in a ventilated place. And I will show you the tin. Here we go. This is the polyurethane, and brushes just wash out really nice. So we'll open the, just move this back a bit, open the polyurethane, give it a stir. Don't shake it, you'll get it full of bubbles. And you can see it's just a milky white polyurethane. Good stir, like I say, if you shake it, it'll be full of bubbles that will then be on your finish. So right, now we've got that done, we'll start polyurethaning this. Just move that so it's in camera. Whoops, where we go. And it's okay to do this while it's wet, but you could well get some bubbles that just start to form. Yeah, we are under the surface. which is fine, we can just work them out. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to carry on and just get this polyurethane, and then we'll have a look. Right, well, I've now got that nicely polyurethaned, and I need to just wait for that to dry. I've trimmed the ends here where they lap over, and the same on the trailing edge. And you can see we've got a nice finish on that now that doesn't, for this top part anyway, doesn't look too dissimilar from the rest. I've brushed the polyurethane on the sides here just to kind of blend it in. You can see it looks a mess here, but there's several layers of different things going on here, so it's kind of not surprising. So if we concentrate on this bit, which is was the nice bit of the wing, if you like. Once this has dried, we'll have another look, and I would probably, or will probably, give this whole wing another coat just to blend it in and make sure it's all sealed. Well, you can see this is now finished and it's blended in and looks lovely. It's very indistinguishable really from the original wing covering. And one thing to note, I used a piece for the blue, I just used a piece of spare tissue that I had. And you can see the grain is running that way. It is, it's quite faint, but you can see, whereas the rest of the blue is running that way. Now, as I said, this was just a little bit of scrap tissue. I didn't want to cut into a big sheet. So that's something to be mindful of if you are doing repairs. You can't really see the grain so much on the orange, but particularly on this darker covering. Now, I think I've said already, but this water-based polyurethane that I'm using is diesel, glow and petrol proof. I've used it on control line, radio control, radio assist models and haven't had any problems at all. So I'm really pleased with the finish that this gives. You can see it's a little bit of a mess down here, but this was my test wing with lots of bits going on. So I hope you found this useful, and you can see how easy it is to do a repair on a tissue over Doculam covering like this. So anyway, thanks very much for watching.